just to kind of talk through our stack, our spooky, non so spooky EUC stack, whatever you call it. But it grows a little bit every time you probably see this, right? So that top layer there, Omnissa is very prominent there at that top level, right? So we have we have various solutions to meet the use case for our customers. We're going to have a poll later to see where you may sit there, but as you can see, Citrix, AVD, Cloud PC, which is the W365 family, Omnissa, Nerdio on top of any of the W365 or the AVD Parallels, Amazon Workspaces. These are really our core DAS, which if you've been with us over the last 3 to 5 years, this has grown substantially on this list, right? Which is why we're here today with the Omnissa partnership and the awesome group over there that's working with us. So, and then you can see on down the other strategic partners we have that fall into this EUC stack. There's a lot that goes into the EUC pie. Any of you already know this, but today we're talking about Omnissa, but tomorrow, Benjamin Krill leads our Nutanix practice. That's part of this presentation. He's got a webinar coming up with them. Christian's doing all kinds of stuff with Island, Chrome Enterprise Browser. We have Prisma Access with Palo, so on and so forth. When you're getting outside of the remote app desktop virtualization solutions, we got it all covered. That just kind of shows you we evolve every time and we grow here. So it's pretty cool what we got going on. The agenda. So it pops out with the blood here. Spooktacular agenda for today. This is what it looks like. We're going to be going through top to bottom, a little bit of a pull, do some kind of go through the journey. Christian's going to talk a little bit about the agile, integration, and then we're going to go through the licensing, the HCS, what it means, differences between that and Horizon 8 Enterprise, the term, and really wrapping up with how to make the best decision, the right fit for what you might be doing, and then any questions that we've held towards the end, the wrap survey, we'll get to that. So, we got the web of EUC, which it truly is a web. That truly is. I mean, it's when you think of it, even if this wasn't a Halloween spirited webinar, the amount of areas that EUC touches is insane. So we've kind of put this together in this slide just to represent this with the Omnissa flair to it, right? So as you can see, the Omnissa, and not just having the Horizon side of things, but going beyond Horizon into the rest of their portfolio, and what makes them such an enterprise play for this is that some of these other technologies they have in the solution stack and some of these other services in their Horizon Cloud services. So as you can see here, this goes through all of it, right? In the end, you got the user at the top, you got the modern management, which a lot of times maybe it's Intune, but you can do that in their stack, right? With Workspace ONE here. But as you look at the access and identity, you got everything from the Omnissa access, the intelligent hub, the web portal, the UAGs coming through there for the proxying of the blast connections, and then really just pick your own identity of whatever you're going to bring to the table, right? We integrate with all of them here, just as you would expect from an enterprise play. The control services, most of our focus is going to be, well, all of our focus, I should say, is going to be on the next gen, is what they call it, HCS, Horizon Cloud Service. It does get a little confusing if you've been around with them for a while, because they have a first gen, which is deprecated now and out the door. The new stuff is the next gen cloud services. That's what all of our focus will be on with anything that we're talking to you guys about. And then Workspace Run has the MDM, the MAN, formerly the AirWatch capabilities, and pretty much everything there. This is again, the control side of things and the control layer. And then we got True SSO, which is your SSO capability. A lot of you may be familiar with the Citrix side of the house, or Citrix customers yourselves. That's your Citrix Federation, FAS services. We'll try to, throughout this presentation, we'll try to make sure to do a little comparison, since many of you probably are familiar with Citrix and what they're doing there, but the roles and responsibilities, and we'll try to do some comparison and make sure that we, to make it easier, that we talk about what that role might be over on this side to compare it to what it is over here. Um, and then you got dynamic environment manager, which is your workspace environment manager from the Citrix perspective. The profiles, containers, you can still use FS logics here. You got smart policies, images. Oh, there's AI everywhere. Security side of things, you got Horizon has recording, similar to session recording. Environment manager has plays into the security side, right? Some of these you'll see that they're on multiple layers because they aren't just one layer of this in this web, right? EDR, SASE, DLP, so on and so forth. And then, of course, your apps and data, right? This is where app volumes from Omnissa sits and does its job, and FinApp. The whole workspace one with web and SaaS and having everything, in the intelligent hub, right, for the users to have on their phones, to get to those apps and data. Now, I know, again, we're focused on Horizon today, but there's much more than that for the big picture. And then finally, the platform layers, which we're going to talk about a little bit about later, which really goes into the focus of why we're here today, is to some degree, with them having opened it up to Nutanix AHV now. We're not just talking VMware anymore for Horizon, right? That's the big difference here. We're not VMware, we're not Broadcom anymore. So, yeah, big web, right? Take and bake indeed. So Shane will jump into sort of
Yeah.
timer.
Yeah. So we'll get who recognizes this photo on the right. You can tell it got AIified by the misspell of Microsoft. If you ever want to know, if right now our tell if it's AI generated is just the crappy spelling, that'll get fixed real soon. But that was, I told it to spookify it. Did a pretty good job. That was one of the old school like VDM, back in the day, VMware, when it first started with what VDI was, that was the picture. And then we kind of made it look like it was in a graveyard. It looks pretty cool, but that's where that pic's from. But yeah, so our thought here is to kind of take you down, memory lane very quickly. But the goal is to kind of help you understand, for folks that might not know, obviously it sounds like a lot, at least half of the calls familiar with Horizon. So obviously knows the journey, but there's some folks that don't, whether, a Citrix customer, Parallels, et cetera. You're probably open to hear more. So, Omnissa, obviously, we're a year into being, private, its own company, but there's a huge history behind the technology stack, right? So we'll just talk through this quickly. But between 2006 and 2023 was VMware's EUC journey, starting in the early days, sort of VDM, View, transitioning into Horizon. So a lot of tenure, a lot of technology through those years. But 2010, they kind of formed their own business unit. That's where VMware was like, you know what, EUC, tip of the spear. You're really generating a lot of revenue at the time. So kind of broke in, built its own business unit, and started to acquire technology, with 2013 being its first acquisition with Destone. Who remembers that? Back in the old Bryform days, right? First DAS solution acquired by VMware, kind of being the Gen 1, which formed in the Horizon Cloud Service Gen 1, was kind of built on kind of that early control plane from Destone. So then 2014, we got into kind of the full stack, as if, taking yourself back down memory lane of being a core EUC person. You remember back in the early Bryform days, potentially, you might remember like things around user environment management, the whole craze around endpoint mobility, right? And the consumerization of IT, right? And so that's where the acquisition of AirWatch came in. It's just an incredible solution around mobile device management. Still is today, but then formed into kind of the whole workspace one story. We're today focusing on Horizon, as Oz pointed out, but we're going to be, later in the future, talk about workspace one. Cloud volumes was a big one, right? And if you really remember, before that, it was Snap volumes, but that was the first, like when there was a huge hype about application packaging, app layering, right? Being able to layer in your applications as VHDs, VMDKs into the environment, abstracting that from the OS layer. So that was a huge acquisition. And then 2015 was Immediate Flex, getting into user environment management, right? Res, AppSense was running hot, right? Those, you had to have an environment manager, and that was Immediate Flex, European-based company they acquired, which is Dynamic Environment Manager today. And then 2016, they originally Teradici PC over IP. Actually, it was RDP originally, and then it was Teradici PC over IP, and then it went into Blast. They kind of formed their own protocol, which is pretty slick. Oz will be digging into that. And then the rest of the year is really 2016 to 2023, just this continued innovation throughout the stack with Horizon, Omnissa One. And then, when they spun out, they had over 26,000 customers, 1.5 billion in AAR. And we're ready to hit the ground running. And so what Oz is going to kind of talk through the timeline, taking you through the private into where we're at today. So
Yeah. So as you mentioned, blast there. When I get down to that part, we really aren't focused these days on anything with PC over IP with Teradata play. So, what does that mean for some of the critical milestones here recently? Right, this 12 months, this real critical time that we've been ramping up. Right. So Broadcom moved in, really terrible roommate moved into the house. Just an absolute terrible roommate. Completed the acquisition, as we're all familiar with.
stock's good though. Stock's
Did yeah, if you're a shareholder, don't do it too bad. Um, yeah, and then for a while, I was like, what are they going to do with the UC? Nobody knew, right? Which is part of this. There's a lot of waffling, and then finally they announces their intention to divest there, right? And then KKR, who owns a lot of different companies underneath their umbrella. But they signed the agreement to acquire, which was really cool because then everybody knew it wasn't going to be left for dead. You saw the gravestones on the last slide. 'Cause there was a lot of speculation of what was going to happen. Because Broadcom has been very well known for slimming, trimming down, and if it's not a profit center or extreme focus, they ditch it. So. And then really a soft launch, April 2024. It was kind of Omnissa. This name was put out there, is introduced as that future name of EUC with a statement from them. Right, it was pretty cool. It was like we were looking forward to this, trying to see where this was going to go. We really weren't dipping our toes yet, because nobody was, because we didn't know what was going to happen here, or how this was going to play out. So Omnissa came around, and then July 2024, they finalized the acquisition. The name was officially launched into its own independent business unit software company as part of KKR. The inaugural conference happened in Amsterdam. Of course, you gotta have a conference. And then really, as we get into the build and these kind of things now, 2503, the partition change within the product, right? The code changes start happening, right? You start leaving the VMware name behind, and we're making it generic with the Horizon in the code and the partition schema. And then the license modules being removed, they're fully transitioning to the Omnissa license module with those builds, as you can see there. And then really some of the cool stuff here real recently, first announced at .next, Horizon 2506. Moving away from the VMware lock-in, the open architecture, to more of an open architecture and not just a Broadcom VMware play, which was a limiting factor for us historically doing anything with Horizon. VMware was famous for throwing in Horizon into ELA deals for vSphere. And it was really just kind of a sideshow for them. If you ever went to one of their conferences, the EUC was kind of stuck over there. It was just something they would throw in, but it was all tied to vSphere VMware, and everything you did there had to be a VMware lock-in. Well, that was a problem for us. So, moving to allowing for example, I'm going to talk about the instant clone technology, that kind of on Nutanix AHV, right? It's limited availability. We aren't yet to GA on that. And then, Omnissa One, we were on the advisory board there. Christian went to Omnissa One in Vegas here just recently. So really cool. That's kind of the walk of the mummy here on the timeline. And what is our take on this, right? So for me, I mean, the big thing for us is it's no longer an afterthought. I alluded to it earlier. They were a small fish. EUC was a small fish in a very big ocean with VMware, Broadcom. So now it's led to this, much faster pace of innovation and single point of focus for Omnissa, which is just incredible, right? So, what they've done and what they're able to do now outside of that, Big Brother overlooking everything, and what Broadcom was doing is awesome. So really just being independent of the shareholders, the Broadcom directives, the future vision, forge its own path, right? KKR doesn't tell them what to do. They can do what they need to do, right, to make the product and the solution stack awesome. And then really for us, that renewed focus on channel partners, and customers, but for us as a partner, huge, right? Part of this is bringing Christian on board. He's had a prior relationship with the folks over at Omnissa there. It's really helped kickstart the relationship we've had with them now in the last 6 months, I want to say, as we've after this Nutanix AHV being opened up. It's very exciting and refreshing. And then that goes to the community, right? The VMUGs kind of died off, of course, with what they were doing. Citrix kicked the CUGCs to the curb and all their community side. But really, Omnissa has been very prominent. As you saw on the earlier slide, they're one of the founding partners with the world of EUC. It put a lot of time and effort into the community and what they're doing there. So that's really important to us. And then, of course, open architecture enablement, really going beyond, VMware, as I mentioned, right? No more lock-in. So, yeah, those are kind of the big takes that we had.
Hey, Scott, it's Christian. So one thing to add there too, from being at the PTAB, the identity of the company is really coming forward now as well. I wanted to add that. So they are really looking at themselves as a real whole holistic platform as well, which is good to see. Being around the VMware product when it was VMware. So that's exciting news to see as well.
Yeah, yeah. You bet. Very good feedback, and that's one of the critical parts for us being able to represent Choice Solutions on the advisory board. We also get a lot of the inside information on where the product's going and where the focus is going, and some cool stuff there. Some a lot of it NDA, some not, but it's very important for us to be sitting here talking to you guys about this today, being able to say we're on the advisory board and we're a key partner with Omnissa and what we're doing there, right? So.